Well, welcome back to another day of Bible study. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege here at Christ Table as being lead clergy. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, super simple. All you need to do is visit the URL right there, www.christstable.today. Sign up for the email list there so that you'll know everything that's happening around Christ Table. If you'd like to know more about this study in particular, the URL right there at the bottom of the screen is there for you, go.christstable.today/bittersweet. We have a couple of free downloads there for you, a PDF that gives a schedule of the entire study, as well as a PDF of a curriculum that will help you walk day by day through each day of the study to go just a little bit deeper. If you would like a printed copy of that schedule, then you can get that by clicking on the button on that URL right there that says get the box. The box comes with this printed copy of the curriculum, as well as a lot of other resources that go along with it. In fact, I have a couple, I think one or two still left over. So we'd love to get these. Would love to give these out to you. If you're interested in those, then just visit the URL that's right there, go.christstable.today/bittersweet. One more thing that I'd like to make sure that you are aware of. We have this book that is available. It makes a great gift. Reconstructing Your Faith for those who may be on the margins, the fringe, or on the way out of faith. Sometimes it's called deconstruction, deconversion, demolition, whatever word it goes by. It can be a really difficult path for people to walk through. This book tells my own story of that and how I maintain my faith, and also gives some ideas from the early church to help you perhaps maintain yours. Find out more information about that at the URL, drkevinyoung.com. That book available everywhere the books are sold. So we're walking through this journey of bittersweet, trying to understand the tension and the relationship between suffering and joy. One of the things that we find out in life oftentimes is that things that are opposites tend to attract and go together. So whenever there are moments of suffering, there can also be moments of joy. Whenever there are moments of joy, there can also be moments of suffering or pain or trauma. So in this idea, what we have done is gone to 1 Peter, a book that is written directly to a community of followers of Jesus Christ who are in the midst of very extreme suffering. And so we're walking through just to see what Peter has to say to them. Today, we find ourselves in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 17, as we begin to walk through this study. One of the things that we want to make sure of as we walk through this study is that we remember that what is written here does not always directly apply to us. Sometimes we're able to glean some things from it, but their situation, their suffering, the time in which it is written to them is not ours. And so we just have to kind of be careful to not rip everything out of context and just apply it one-to-one to our situation, assuming Peter's advice would have been the same to us today as it was to them. So we just have to be a little bit cautious there as we walk through this. One thing that we do want to keep in mind, though, is that he is going to, in our text for today, continue this theme of letting the watching pagans see a genuine way of being human. So what I mean by pagans here are people who are not followers of Jesus Christ. Sometimes that word is taken to mean a certain type of person who is not a follower of Jesus. But essentially, in this context, in the context that Peter would have been in, and the early church, it was simply people who were not followers of Jesus Christ, who their worldview was outside of a lens of utilizing Jesus. And so the idea here that Peter continues to put forth is allow the pagan world, the non-Christian world, to just simply watch you being a Christian. And being a Christian is really just simply a more genuine, a better way of being human. It's the default for humanity. If you go back to Genesis and look at the default operating system, the programming that we were given as humans, that is essentially what a Christian is supposed to be. So much, I'd say all of Jesus' teaching, so much of the teachings of Paul is intended to reframe and refresh in our minds what it means to be how we were designed originally, to be better humans. Another word for that, obviously, is salvation, is redemption, living the Christian life, transformation. Into what? Well, transformation into a reflection of Jesus, Jesus being the purest and most ultimate example of what it means to be perfectly human. So this is the theme that Peter is trying to see here, is live your life, but live it in such a way that you're living it well and differently, but living it the way that it should be lived, Christian or not. So let's jump into the text here, verses 13 through 17. For the Lord's sake. So you're doing something here for God, for his sake, not for yours, not for people around you, which means this is probably going to be difficult. Whenever my grandmother would say, for the Lord's sake, or for God's sake, you'd be like, okay, whatever is about to come out of her mouth is going to be very important, probably very difficult, and likely also very confrontational to what I want to hear. So for the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority. So remember what we've said. It's very difficult for us to place this in our own context because of the context in which they are in. And this has been warped, sadly, this idea of submitting to all human authority, but also the authorities that Peter was asking these individuals to submit to were far worse than any authority that here in U.S. America we have ever been asked to submit to. So we have to look at what Peter's saying here and say, even if he's not asking us to do something difficult like this, we can say that at this moment. Even if he's not asking us to do that, he is asking them to do something more difficult than he would be asking us to do, were he asking us to do it. Submit to all human authority, whether the king as head of state or the officials he has appointed. So Peter is encouraging them to not be resistant to whomever is in authority over them, whether it be the king or the folks who are in place at the pleasure of the king. For the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong and to honor those who do right. So Peter is saying here, there are very real circumstances, very real outcomes to those who do not do right and to those who do wrong. So it's God's will that your honorable lives should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you. I think of the Haitians who foolish accusations were made against them about eating animals, pets, cats and dogs. And I wonder if I would be able to be silent whenever political leaders, both national and local, spoke out in very harmful, nasty, racist ways against me. If I were them, I don't know that I would be able to be silent. But Peter here to his people is saying, whenever you're confronted with ignorance from people in powerful and high places, your lives should be able to silence them simply by the way that you live, by the way that you respond, by the way that you act. People should not be able to say things about your character, about your integrity, about who you are. They may disagree with what you believe. They may disagree with how you practice and what you live out. They may be vehemently opposed to what you hold as core truths and values, but they should never be able to look at your life and be able to speak anything truthfully against it. Your lives should silence them. For you're free, yet you're God's slaves. So don't use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Peter says, yes, you are in a different kingdom, God's kingdom. You answer to a different authority, ultimately God's authority. But yes, though you are free, You also are God's, better translation here is probably servant. You serve a different master, so don't forget that serving that master comes with responsibilities. Serving God, being a servant of God, comes with responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to live a life that is able to silence other people. Even though you may be right in what you're saying and what you're thinking and what you're doing, and resisting this king's authority when it crosses lines. Here in this place, Peter says to his people, it's better to just live a life that does not give anyone an opportunity to speak against you. Don't use your freedom with God as an excuse to do evil with others. But we see Christians do that all the time, right? Justify all manner of nasty behavior and words, vitriol, because they are free. As Christians, they don't have to hold their tongue. They believe that God blesses everything that they say and everything that they do because they're right. So anybody who comes against them, who speaks against them, who believes differently than they do, is wrong, and they're going to let you know it. Peter says, at least in this situation, that is not right behavior. Respect everyone and love the family of believers. But fear God also and respect the king. Interesting that he would use that word respect twice. For everyone, even the family of believers, have awe of God, fear of God, respect for God. So respect the king too. Those authorities who are over top of you. And the authorities that were over top of them were miserable human beings who were utilizing the Christians as leverage to turn the empire against them. What Peter is doing here is something that is very needful probably today for us to see and understand. He's advocating a different way. He's advocating to us willingly subjecting ourselves to the ruling authorities, but at the same time, making sure that by our good behavior, we're shaming those who out of folly and out of ignorance want to criticize us. We draw criticism on ourselves by doing wrong, by speaking wrongly, but we also draw criticism on ourselves by sometimes doing rightly and speaking rightly, but at the wrong times, on the wrong things, in the wrong places. And the real difficulty is, are you really speaking rightly? Nobody gets it 100% right. Nobody gets theology 100% right. Famous quote, I can't remember which professor or leading Christian influencer said it several decades ago, but he said 80% of what I believe is right. 20% is wrong. The problem is I don't know which is the 80% and I don't know which is the 20%. That should give humility, that even though we may think we are right completely on something, it may turn out that we're wrong. Recognizing that should give us an air of different interaction with those around us. Peter's saying, be subject to the ruling authorities over you. He's not saying do it just if you find their opinion agreeable. He's saying be subject to them, but make sure at the same time that you're on good behavior. When you're on good behavior, when you're acting and behaving well, especially when you're acting and behaving well, whenever the people in authority over you have it out for you, people recognize that. People see that. And it triggers something within them to notice and to begin to ask questions. What it ends up doing is it shames those, the Bible uses this term, it heaps hot coals on their heads, on those who want to criticize you. I love the way that N.T. Wright kind of frames this. N.T. Wright says this, he says, this is how God is establishing his presence and his rule on earth as in heaven, through this idea right here that Peter's talking about. Oppressive tyranny and violent revolution are not the only options in response to difficult rulers. N.T. Wright says, serving the true God by living a peaceful, wise, and visibly good life is, in the end, actually far more revolutionary than simply overthrowing one corrupt regime and replacing it by, well, most likely another corrupt regime, as history shows. So Peter is advocating here for a different way of living, a different way of being revolutionary, not being a revolutionary by taking on by force or by laws, oppressive tyranny, by creating violent revolution, but in a different way, by living a peaceful, wise, and visibly good life. And N.T. Wright says, and it's true, that history shows us that is the far better way. Christians will be called to suffer, is kind of how we distill out this lesson in 1 Peter, to suffer greatly and to suffer unjustly. But it's after the pattern of Jesus himself. Nobody gets out of this life better than Jesus. If you're a Christian, you are going to suffer. That is what Scripture tells us. Whether it is for your Christianity or not, you're going to suffer greatly, and some of that is going to come unjustly. And some of that, you're just going to have to find a way to process through and let go of and move on. But that's the pattern of Jesus. And who better to follow than his pattern? Well, it's been good to be with you today. Just a reminder that all of those materials are available for free at go.christstable.today/bittersweet. Make sure to get out those stickers, utilize those in the workbook today as you're working through your thoughts on this lesson. And I'd love to let you know. I'd love to hear what you think as well. Well, it's been good to be with you today. Look forward to being back with you tomorrow as we continue on this bittersweet Bible study. Until that time,